Hey there. We're going to continue to talk about the Renaissance and Reformation, and hopefully you're seeing a connection between the new ideas introduced into Europe in this Renaissance, these values that had really escaped Europe for centuries being brought back through trade. It's also going to bring some challenges to the church. Understand that splits in Christianity had happened before. Most notably the 1054 split between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. We talked about that Pope versus Patriarch issue of power, who had political power over church officials, and that split, of course, would create two strands, really, of Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church had been the dominant force, however, in Europe throughout the Middle Ages. It was not without criticism. Many saw the secular moves of power and money really to be out of order with the church's purpose of spiritual direction and leadership. If you remember, we talked about during the Middle Ages the Inquisition, the seeking out of heretics, those people who, through doctrine, that means the belief system of the church, people who challenge those doctrines would often be hunted down and forced to recant or forced to really change their views if they did not want to face serious consequences. Some reforms were made, it says. However, understand that the church had backfired, or the attempts by the church to insert itself throughout the Middle Ages, if you remember, many times backfired. The lay investiture issue. We talked about the Great Schism as popes were moved out of Rome over the taxation issue. So the church was really kind of weakened, if you will. Still important, but very much weakened as the Middle Ages comes to a close. So as the Reformation, as we're going to call it in the really the early 1500s takes shape, there's several things that are going to kind of set the stage for this, several factors. It says the spread of secular ideas and individualism as a result of the Renaissance. Thank you, printing press, we wrote in the notes there. Definitely is going to spread those ideas to more folks. Political power is going to be a challenge. The discrepancies of power within the Holy Roman Empire itself are going to create some either, are you favored by the Pope or are you not favored by the Pope? Emperors of the Holy Roman Empire and then those princes of the different feudal states there had that in order. There was much criticism over the power of the Pope and the extravagance of that office. The amount of money that was, the corruption, if you will, of some popes as they were in office was definitely noted. It says many times there was criticism over the lower clergy, the priests and the friars that were interacting with the people on a regular basis in their parishes. Were often poorly educated, many times corrupt themselves. So all of this had called for some reforms even prior to this, what we're going to call the Reformation. A couple of names to mention here. John Huss, it said, had challenged the idea openly that the Pope needed to refrain from political power. The humanist Erasmus had been critical of the church and their motives and practices. And then, of course, we've already mentioned Sir Thomas More, the writer of Utopia, who really saw the church as a failure when it came to the leadership of spiritual purposes. So all of this really kind of was stirring up into quite a mess. When Martin Luther comes on the scene, he was, of course, a professor, the notes tell us, at the University of Wittenberg there in the feudal state of Saxony in what is today Germany. He was fed up with the corruption and posted what are 95 theses, or really a list of 95 objections, suggestions, and issues he had with the church. He put it on the cathedral door, it says in 1517, on October 31st. One of the main issues that he's going to have is with the selling of indulgences. These indulgences, just to simplify, were basically payments being made to the church for forgiveness of sins. And that meant, money had power when it came to your salvation. His challenge is going to be that salvation is only going to be held through the justification of faith. There's really no way, to use the phrase, to buy your way into heaven. This idea was spreading rapidly, again, thanks to the printing press. At first, he was kind of thought of as being probably some crackpot, maybe even drunk monk that had maybe stayed in the pub a little bit too long there. But pretty soon, this idea was gaining steam throughout the countryside. A series of events did unfold, and the Pope even got involved. Pope Leo X had threatened excommunication over someone who would challenge the church to this degree. Martin Luther would hold his position and, of course, be excommunicated. This creates a problem for Charles V, and this is where you start to see political and religious power starting to infuse once again. Charles V, the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, was a devout Catholic, it says, and was trying to hold his empire together. Again, the allegiances between the princes under his feudal authority still were spread out between either in favor of the Pope or maybe challenging the Pope. So Martin Luther was summoned to Worms to stand trial for his actions in 1521, and what is called the Edict of Worms would declare him a heretic and an outlaw. So he goes from being really an official in the church to now being kicked out of the church to now even being an outlaw in the eyes of the law. He would return to Wittenberg in 1522 and find out that many of his ideas were being practiced, and really a new sect of Christianity had formed. So initially, going back to the 1054 split, these were two different strands of leadership between the Roman Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Now you're seeing the Roman Catholic Church itself even fracture here. This new sect of Christianity would take the name of Lutheranism. His reform ideas would spread. Peasants would revolt in the name of these new ideas, challenging both political and religious authorities. They would be crushed violently by the princes. There was some who even felt like that Martin Luther's ideas should be followed. So there's going to be a multitude of splits here. This is, again, going to, as we said earlier in the notes, this is going to open the floodgates. So several northern princes supported Luther's ideas, some for selfish reasons, not really for his spiritual views, but this was a way to challenge Charles V. The war would follow, and the Peace of Augsburg in 1555 would provide religious choice in Germany, not for the people, but for the princes. Again, the people are still going to follow the faith, not what you would consider religious freedom as we consider it today in America, but what is going to be the faith of your kingdom. And that's going to set us up for some more splits that we'll talk about in the next set. Thanks.